Thanks, bud. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session of the VAACE 2023 conference. My name is Xavier Munoz. I am the presenter for this session on using AI to reduce lesson planning time. I hope you all are having a wonderful first day of the conference. I know that some folks will be trickling in and finding the Zoom link, so I wanted to start with a little bit of a warm-up activity to get us thinking about today's topic. So looking at this visual that I created with assistance from AI, post in the chat, what are you seeing? What message do you think this might be conveying? Why did I pick this image to start off today's session? And also say hello. Introduce yourself in the chat too. So for those of you who might just be joining, we are just starting with a warm-up activity. In the chat, introduce yourself and share what you see in this image and what message it might be conveying. All right, we're seeing some excellent comments in the chat. Hello, everyone. Thanks for introducing yourselves. Some people are commenting on seeing inclusive, diversity, anyone can benefit. There's smiling, so AI is a good tool for the classroom. Inclusivity, diversity, AI can build bridges between people. Positivity. Great. So this does, I think, I hope, capture the feelings, the perspectives I have on using AI in adult education. And I hope you will, through today's session, come to your own conclusions. And if you're brand new to considering the use of AI, that you'll start thinking a little bit about it. And whether or not you share the same opinion, I hope you'll understand a little bit of where I'm coming from. So if you're just joining, you are in the right session if you're here for using AI to reduce lesson planning time. And you have the slides in this recording that VAACE will provide, but if you also want to look ahead, depending on your experience level, you might be wanting to really jump in and try some things. So you are welcome to look at the slides as we go. I posted it there in the chat. If you're on a mobile device or if you're on a computer and have a mobile device, you can scan the QR code to get these materials. And if I make any additions based on your wonderful contributions today, you'll see those updates in that same link. So I'll post it there again in the chat, and then we will get underway. All right, so I'm so glad you all are here joining me for this session. I know Dr. Finn talked a little bit about AI during the welcome speech this morning, which is a nice prelude to this session and the next AI session that I believe is tomorrow. But I want to start with getting your thoughts on, rather your familiarity on AI. So if you can, please go to slido.com and then put in this participant code. I've also posted the link to slido.com in the chat if you prefer to use it that way. Great. So the first question there, what's your familiarity with ChatGPT, Bard, or other similar tools? And no worries if you prefer not to go to slido.com. You can post your responses in the chat. Would love to hear from you in either way. All right, and I'll start sharing the results as they're coming in. See where people are in this group in terms of familiarity. So seeing the majority are in the not at all familiar or slightly familiar space. Some folks are moderately or somewhat familiar. Great, and that's from 16 respondents, 17 respondents. All right, um, we're at majority are slightly familiar. Wonderful. Okay, now I have another question to get to know a little bit about you all and to hone in on today's topic. So what challenges do you face with lesson planning? Doesn't matter if you're using AI, just generally speaking, what challenges do you face with lesson planning? So you can post in the chat, or yep, if you're on that same page of slido.com, you can type that in there. All right, we're seeing time, not enough time, time constraints, a variety of levels in class, digital resources, creativity, differentiating, doing something new. Who will come to class, right? There might be sporadic attendance and it's not necessarily consistent from day to day. Whether it's a drop-in class or there's managed enrollment, attendance can be irregular. We know that. All right, I'm going to give time for one more respondent, get us to 15 folks commenting on this question, and then we will continue on. But I really hope that this session will help address some of these challenges and help you see how using AI might be able to save time, help you with differentiating, help you with scaffolding for different levels in your class. So keep these in mind as we go through today's session. All right, so let's continue on. So today's session, we'll touch on the basics of generative AI, and I will explain what that term means. We'll touch on some strategies to use when to prompt AI, and we'll talk about what prompting means in this context. And we will give you some time to practice and try it out. With AI, I have found that you really got to experiment, you've got to play with it. You can spend hours and hours reading and watching things, but you just got to get in there and try it out. And from that, you'll see how helpful or not so helpful it might be. So given today's topic is merging the use of artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence for lesson planning, what questions do you have as you're coming into this session that you hope I might answer or that you hope the group can help answer? What questions do you have about today's topic? And so this one, it's not going to be in slido.com. We're just going to come back to Zoom and in the chat, post any questions you might have. All right, you're seeing lots of questions come in. That is excellent. This is certainly quite the topic in the field of education, adult education, and just our world today, right? Our digital world today. So some of the questions we're seeing are, is AI secure? Can we trust ChatGPT? What are your top 3 AI tools? Can AI write my lesson plan for me? What is AI? How do I use it? How do I get started? Is it frowned upon in our field, the use of it? How do I access it? Ethical implications, and things around copyright and whether it's yours or not. Is it effective? Hoping that it could help curate a lot of resources. Excellent. Okay, I will do my best to try to answer some, maybe all of these questions, and certainly invite those of you with a little more familiarity or knowledge about AI to chime in and respond to folks. But at the end of the session, we will have some time for Q&A, and if I don't answer these throughout the session, I will try to answer them at the end. All right, so now let's talk about what generative AI is and what these different tools are. So artificial intelligence, a definition of it that I quite like, that Rachel Riggs from the EdTech Center at World Education has used, is artificial intelligence is a field of computer science where machines do tasks that usually need human intelligence. This is similar to the definition that Dr. Finn shared in the welcome speech. What we're talking about today, though, is generative AI, generative artificial intelligence, which Rachel Riggs had heard the definition that she has shared is, it's a form of artificial intelligence that doesn't just repeat information and data, but it generates new data. So that might be text, might be images, audio, computer coding. It's really artificial intelligence that creates something new. So the four main ones that I invite you to consider, picking one of these, are ChatGPT, Bing Chat, Bard from Google, and Claude from Anthropic. And I will provide links to these in later slides. But these are the four that they all function kind of similarly. The interfaces, how you see them on the website, on the page, are all pretty comparable. And the techniques that we'll look at today could be used pretty much with any of these four very general generative AI tools. What we will not touch on today are other types of generative AI tools. There are tools that can help create art, visuals, photos, and the like. There's generative AI tools that can help create videos, and even some that can create audio. And there are more being created, more startups every single day, but we will focus on those ones in the previous slide: ChatGPT, Bing's Chat, Bard, and Claude. Sometimes they're called AI chatbots or Gen AI tools. So thinking about the tools that I think can be useful for lesson planning, the general purpose ones, there's ChatGPT, which has a free version and then separately a paid version. There's Bing Chat, that's through Microsoft, that's free to use. There's Bard from Google, and Claude is from another company called Anthropic. ChatGPT and Bing Chat you could use as a standalone mobile app, but all four of these are basically a website. You're going to a website and then you are conversing with this tool to ask it to do things and create content for you. There are also some more specialized tools that we won't touch on today, but I encourage you to take a look at. They might help save time when it comes to lesson planning, which are Magic School and Auto Classmate, that take the same base models of those more general tools, but really restrict it. So if you want to create a lesson plan, it has specific boxes of, what's the grade level, what's the topic. It saves you some of the work there. So an important question is, can these tools access the internet? Can they pull information from the internet? Well, some of them can, and that would be ChatGPT 4.0, Bing Chat, as well as Google's Bard. ChatGPT 4.0 requires a paid subscription. The other two do not require paid subscription. The ones that cannot access the internet are ChatGPT 3.0 and Claude. So you may see a lot of articles about how ChatGPT's information stopped in 2021, Claude's information stopped in 2022. That is the data that these AI models are trained on. But there are some that can access the internet, can search the internet and pull things in response to what you might be asking. So some general considerations that we won't spend much time on today, but are important to acknowledge and to spend time learning about are privacy, accuracy, AI literacy, as well as student use of AI. So when it comes to privacy, a general tip that I've heard and that I recommend to any of the teachers that I work with is don't input personally identifiable information. So don't share students' names, certainly not addresses, anything that might point to a real person. If you as a teacher feel comfortable creating a story with your own information, that's one thing, but generally speaking, I don't advise sharing personal information. There are some ways to disable the tool from saving your chat history, but the free versions especially tend to have a disclaimer up front that indicates that they may use your conversations with the AI tool to help train the model to improve it over time. When it comes to accuracy, here's where it gets a little tricky. These AI chatbots, as we will see, they might sound right. They sound very human-like in their responses. They might be very convincing, and it might speak with authority, but very often it might provide false information, or it might, as many people call it, hallucinate. And even if you ask the ones that have access to the internet for citations and sources, sometimes those sources aren't the best sources, or the ones that are top quality sources of information. So it's always important to have the humans, have us in the loop of using AI tools, using it together with AI to check and verify the outputs. And then there's a lot of other considerations around the biases in the data that these AI tools are trained on, plagiarism when it comes to using AI for maybe essays or written compositions, how to cite AI, data security, and even the environmental impact, right? Technology is not an energy-free activity. The responses that a chatbot provides you, it's because there's some server out there that is needing electricity to run its machines and its operations. So it consumes energy to use these tools, and we can't forget that. And then student use of AI as well. But today's session, we are just going to focus more so on you as teachers, administrators, and how you might be using AI. Some mistakes that we should address up front. These chatbots, ChatGPT, Bing Chat, and so on, they're not search engines. While they can feel like it, and many people might use it to ask questions or look up information as if it were a Google search, they're different than search engines. Part of that is what I was saying earlier. It might provide false information, or it might cite sources that aren't the best or aren't legitimate sources, but it can be used in other ways. Another mistake is to only put in one prompt and then take its response as is. As you'll see, an important strategy is to go back and forth with the AI tool, really converse with it, tweak it, refine it, get it to provide the sort of thing that you were looking for. And again, the third mistake is not checking for inaccuracies and bias. A fourth one is, especially if you're maybe teaching composition classes or writing classes, this is a big topic, I think, in K-12 and higher education, are AI detectors. Teachers, program administrators that want to see whether students are using AI to produce their written essays. That's a mistake. There's a lot of research that's pointing to how unreliable the AI detectors are, and also that many of them can negatively penalize English language learners and think that an English language learner's written text is plagiarized and generated by AI when it might actually just be their own. So most things that I've seen point to, it's just not reliable enough to use. It's not recommended for schools to really consider it. And the fifth one, we got to experiment. It's really important to try these things out, play with it. And again, we'll have some time today for you to try that. Okay, one final general tip here. This one comes from the organization AI for Education. And the link to it is in this slide. It'll be at the end of these slides as well. Like it says, these four different tools, ChatGPT, Claude, Bard, and Bing, they can generate text through natural language and prompting. So it sounds very realistic, and it's through you prompting it to spit something back out. I really think it's useful as a brainstorming partner up here on the top right. It can help you get started. By conversing with it, you can provide it feedback and improve what it spits back out to you. And one helpful way of considering the use of these chatbots is an 80-20 rule. So the AI tool is doing maybe 80% of the work for you, but there's still at least 20% that you're doing. So it's definitely saving you time, but you have to put in some effort into using it, checking for false information, refining, providing feedback to it so it gives you a better output. Okay, now let's look at some examples. After that, we will dive into how to use these tools. And these examples that I'm going to share come from a really quality YouTube series put on by the EdTech Center at World Education on the use of generative AI. But I thought they'd be very useful for us to look at too. So one is for an English language acquisition class or an ESOL class. And this is from Dr. Yoon Jae, who is teaching in a community college type of setting. And this is for a writing assignment. What you're seeing on the screen here is a snippet of a Google Doc that has 4 different columns, with the leftmost column having the student's name, the second column having the student's draft, the third column having suggestions from the AI chatbot for how to improve that draft, and then the fourth column being a space where the students put in what they notice about what's different between their draft and the suggestions from the AI. So this is one example of a teacher using AI to help save them time, right? To provide individualized feedback for every single learner's piece of writing or drafts can take a lot of time. AI can be really great at looking at written material and identifying where maybe there's grammatical issues or where ideas could be organized more coherently. But this teacher acknowledges that the AI tool isn't necessarily perfect and wants the student to be involved, engaging their critical thinking to see, compare what the AI is suggesting with their own draft and notice for themselves, are those things errors that the AI pointed out? Are there patterns in the types of errors or suggestions that the AI chatbot has helped point out? Another example to give you a chance to hear from Rachel Riggs herself. This is actually from that same teacher, Dr. Yoon Jae. Please focus on the middle column there that you'll see when I start playing this video. Um, it is on representation in learning materials, right? That kind of speaks to the differentiation that some of you addressed as a challenge. How do I differentiate when my textbook only presents one kind of example of adult life in the US? How can I perhaps use a chatbot to bring in other culturally relevant representations in my class?
Yenjay is also using it to develop learning materials that are highly relevant and representative of her learners. Here you're seeing an example of Yenjay generating a reading passage that is a love story about Yenjay, her using her own name, but to develop this interesting story. So she developed a love story about Yenjay, a Korean girl, in which Yenjay's Mexican-American boyfriend's mother, Elaine, wants a Spanish-speaking daughter-in-law. Yenjay's friend in the story is going to use K-drama to change Elaine's mind. So you can see how generating highly relevant and culturally diverse texts like this could support learner engagement. Finally, Yenjay facilitates learners in
So the prompt for that, I'll share some prompt collections or prompt libraries where you can get some ideas for if you're looking to create that kind of story, what you would put into the chatbot.
there.
But
Yenjay is
let's take a
also
look
using it
at
to develop learning materials that are highly
one more example. In this case, if you work in, let's say, a workforce development type of class or an IET class, I know that a challenge often is we as educators or language educators, we're not subject matter experts in every single thing. And our students are seeking, or we want to help them get into any number of career pathways. So how do we make sense of that technical job-specific language to help our learners, especially our English language learners? So this example comes from Anson Green, again, as shared in that EdTech Center at World Education YouTube series. And he puts in this technical language. So rotate the rotary style electrical disconnect located below the HMI from off to on. Boy, I don't know what that means, but you could put that into a chatbot and even just a simple question, what does this mean? The chatbot spits out a more detailed explanation that isn't necessarily using easy vocabulary, but it's not just using things like rotary and HMI. It elaborates on it. okay, that prompt is decent, but I want to make it more succinct. So Anson Green just put in succinct. You could say, please shorten it. Say, please simplify the language. And so then ChatGPT simplifies it. You can see it's shorter. To power up the machine, locate the rotary style electrical disconnect switch underneath the machine and turn it from off to on. And then he wants to adjust the reading level. So here he just puts in grade 5. ChatGPT simplifies it. I'll say here, I find that chatbots are okay at simplifying text. They're not, I don't trust them fully that if I say change it to grade 5 or third grade level or seventh grade level, that it's going to be accurate at that. It might say, I know what lexical levels are. Yes, I know what grade level equivalencies are. But that's again where we as educators come in to really see, is this at an appropriate language level for my learners? Do I need to scaffold it more or use separate Lexile analyzer tools, readability tools? So, and then Anson Green also knows that there has to be that step of reviewing the information. In this case, the workplace literacy class that he was helping to design, he knows that there's a key term, palletizer, that's used at that place of work that they want to make sure to include in the definition. And then I think aspirationally, when there's time as a curriculum designer or teacher to work with an employer, getting someone with that industry expertise to look at that explanation for a learner and see, is turn the handle on the cabinet of the palletizer to turn the power on. Does that still match the meaning of that technical language that was in, let's say, the job manual? Okay, those are just a few little examples of how you might use chatbots for classes to save you time when it comes to comparing writings and providing feedback, to helping to explain complicated vocabulary, or to help diversify the stories that you might use in class. Important question, though, is how do we actually use these tools? Well, we're going to watch a 4.5-minute video that shows 3 of the tools. It'll show ChatGPT, Bing's Chat, and Google Bard. And then after that, I'll do a live demonstration with you, and I'll show the use of that. And then I'll ask you to try them out for yourselves.
So again, there are 3 foundational models that we're talking about. We're not endorsing one or another, but they are 3 powerful models. That is Microsoft's Bing, especially in creative mode, OpenAI's ChatGPT 3.5 and 4.0, and Google's Bard.
So I'm going to show you the 3.5 and 4 models as we use them here. So 3.5 is very fast, but is slightly less capable. So if I say something like, write me a limerick about why teachers are great, it will do something very quickly. And there's some okay rhymes there. It's not amazing. Thrives in a rise. So let's switch to the more capable GPT-4 model. And you might notice there are different versions of GPT-4 models that might be available to you depending on what version of OpenAI software you're using. We're just going to use the plain version of GPT-4, but there's versions that have tools included in them, like web browsing or the ability to create code. But let's just say write a limerick about why teachers are great, and you will see that the model is both slower and a little more sophisticated as a result. And you'll notice a few features as you do this. There is the ability that you have to, to clear and start chats again, which will start from scratch. Once you've created something, then you can also end up recreating it if you want to. There's a regenerate button that you can use. You can also stop generation if it's not going where you want it to go, and ask it to regenerate any response that you had before. The version we're using, we've turned off chat history, which removes some features but makes the chat more private. OpenAI has promised not to use that to train its models in the future, but I could turn that on and I get access to more features as a result. So that's a privacy balancing act that you'll have to do. You also can edit your replies. So I said here, write a poem. I could say write a poem about teachers now, and that will actually change the response. So I now have a second answer. And if I go back, you'll be able to see that I can actually now flip between the different answers I had. So that lets me refine my prompts, something we'll be talking more about. In some cases, I can also copy text from a prompt elsewhere. So I can do all these things using this chat interface. Of course, the interface is updating all the time, so your mileage may be a little bit different.
So right now we're going to talk about Bing, and Bing is connected to the internet. There are 3 different modes. There is precise mode, which you can see here by the green. Balance mode is blue, and the creative mode, which is the more powerful model based on 4.0, is the purple. And you can ask it anything you want, and it will respond to you. As you can see, it only has right now 20 prompts at a time, but that continues to increase. It will also give you suggestions on where to go next. A lot of the times these suggestions are great. Sometimes they may not be so great, and so you have to decide if you want to follow its path or your own path after every single prompt. If you want to start a new topic, you use this broom and you start a new topic.
Finally, this is Google Bard, and Google Bard is a little bit different than the 2 other models we talked about, both of which are powered by OpenAI's model. So they feel very similar to each other, while Bard feels a little bit different. If we say, write me a poem in Bard, we will get the answer all at once as opposed to in segments, and it will generally be much faster than other models, though again, it depends on the circumstance. And there's a few things you can do differently. So one thing I can do is I can view other drafts, and it provides 3 different versions, and whichever version I pick, that's the version that the system will continue to use in the future. I can hit reload to get new drafts, and I can, just like other models, edit the chat afterwards and change it to something else, and it will recreate the conversation there. And those options are all useful ones if I want to get going. I also can reset the chat at any point, and that lets me continue to build things. And there's a few other interesting options here, like the ability to export things directly to documents or Gmail. That will be coming soon to Microsoft products as well. So this will be more integrated in with your regular work tools pretty.
So
All right, and so this one, the link to this again is going to be in the slides. Some of these updates, I mean, this series by the Wharton School on a practical AI for instructors and students was a few months ago, and largely is still very relevant, but some of these features that they're talking about might already be part of these tools. So just to recap what you were seeing, with each of these tools, you can edit your prompt. You can have it generate a different response if you don't like the first one that it comes up with. And then you can also clear it or just start a new chat and then enter a new prompt and get some additional responses. Okay, continuing on, we're going to do now a live demonstration of this. Before I do that, I will put the links to these tools in the chat if you prefer to explore them on your own instead of watching my live demonstration. Perfectly fine, because after this, I'm going to invite you all to experiment with them on your own. I'll give you some of that time during this session today. So let me put those links in the chat momentarily. And while I'm doing that, certainly if there are questions coming to mind for you, having seen these initial things, please do post them in the chat. That way, either I or maybe with Marilyn's help towards the end of the session, we can address those questions. Okay, and in the chat now, I've just put the links to those 4 tools that I think are worth trying. For today, I recommend just going with one of the tools. It can quickly get overwhelming, at least for me, to have too many different tools that I'm trying to get familiar with. ChatGPT does require you to create an account. Bing Chat does not. If you don't create an account with Bing, then you can have a limited number of back and forth prompt response conversations with Bing Chat, or you can register for free. Google's Bard, again, also requires free registration, and then Claude also requires free registration. Okay, but now let's do a live demonstration of one of these. And as for whether I have a preference, honestly, I don't at this point. I kind of go back and forth between these. I tend to use Claude or ChatGPT, but I'm realizing that Bing Chat, I underestimated its potential some months ago, and now I'm trying to just get familiar with it that way for sessions like this, and with teachers and things, I can help guide our use of it. Okay, but for this live demonstration, I know that some of you asked whether these AI chatbots could help write a lesson plan for you. So an example that I thought we could go with is, let's say we're teaching a family literacy class, and the topic that we want to be teaching about is mental health. My background is in TESOL, is teaching English to speakers of other languages. It's not in mental health, behavioral health. I know about health literacy resources that I could bring in, but I want an AI chatbot to help me get things started, help me think of ideas, maybe remind me of some useful activity ideas that I could consider with the class. So for this, I will use ChatGPT for our live demo. But again, you could use any of those four, and they will be relatively similar in terms of how to do it. So for this demonstration, I'm going to use GPT 3.5, which is the free version. GPT-4 is a paid version. So I'm going to start with just a very simple prompt, nothing too long. I'm going to put in, create a lesson plan about mental health or a family literacy class. Okay, we see it's going to come up with some things. I'll scroll up to the top so we can look at some of this together. So zoom in a little more, so apologies for the movement on your screen here. So that's a lot of things very quickly, just to scroll through this. That's a lot of idea generation that happened in 5 seconds. If I take a look, okay, let's see, what's the objective? By the end of this lesson, participants will have a better understanding of mental health, its importance, practical strategies for promoting mental well-being within their families. This would be for a 90-minute class, some materials, whiteboard and markers, handouts and information on mental health, worksheets, pencils, list of local mental health resources, art supplies. Some of the things that I'm seeing here, it's reminding me that a topic like mental health is not in a vacuum, and it's not just about vocabulary and language, but it's also about community resources. So I like that it included that as part of the materials. It gives some time ranges for the different stages of this lesson. So introduction, 10 minutes, discussion, 20 minutes. Let's see, understanding mental health, 30 minutes, activities, 20 minutes, practical tips, 10 minutes, and so on. But let's take a look at that introduction. Welcome the participants and create a safe and supportive environment for discussion. And so it's sort of talking to me as the teacher, saying, your teacher, do these things, right? Probably do some sort of icebreaker, like with a simple activity or question to engage participants and create a comfortable atmosphere. For example, ask them to share something that makes them feel happy or relaxed. All right, and then it gets into talk about some different things for understanding. So some information to learn about, some common health challenges, signs and symptoms. Let's see some of the activities just to skip down here. Family support. Discuss the importance of family support in promoting mental health. Have participants brainstorm and share ways they can support each other's mental well-being within their families. So liking that there's some collaboration that it's encouraging, learners talking with each other, that it's not just a lecture from me, the teacher, but it's inviting learners to share their ideas for how to support mental well-being. And the question there in the chat, did I specify the length? I did not. So in this case, it did automatically plan for 90 minutes. I can't speak to its assumptions for it, but the way these AI tools are developed, it's all kind of about association. So it might be looking at a data set that it was trained on that saw lesson plans tend to be around 90 minutes. Lesson, 90 minutes, these words tend to go together. And that's why it said this. But I could change that, right? If my class is actually 2 hours, apologies, I'm gonna zoom out for a second here. Change to a 2-hour lesson. That was my prompt. And scroll down and see what it's generating. It's saying it's 2 hours. The introduction is 5 minutes longer. The discussion is 10 minutes longer. And it's added some time on to several of the different stages. When I look at this though, with the introduction, icebreaker, have a simple activity or question to engage the participants. Okay, that's a strategy I would definitely use, but I'm struggling to think of what questions I might ask. So I can put into this prompt for the introduction, create, let's say, 5 to 7 questions I might ask for the icebreaker. Certainly, here are some questions. What's one thing that always brings a smile to your face, no matter how tough the day has been? Can you share a favorite memory or experience that made you feel really happy? Is there a book, movie, or song that never fails to lift your spirits, and so on? Okay, all right. This is something I can work with. Right, this is saving me a lot of time trying to generate these different ideas to hopefully engage the learners in my class. One other thing that I saw that I want the chatbot to expand on is, it doesn't really say anything about how to differentiate. So even just generally speaking, I could say, provide tips for how to differentiate this lesson for adult English language learners at a variety of English proficiency levels. Okay, quite a lot of ideas here. We'll scroll up and take a quick look at a few of these. And thank you. The question, when I'm typing, do I have to click something specific to add on to your request? No. For all of these, there's going to be towards the bottom of the screen, there'll be kind of like if you're texting on your phone, that little space where you can input text. Make sure that your cursor is in that little text field, and then type whatever it is that you want to type. And then there's a sort of send button, or you can just click enter to add on that prompt. So these tips for differentiating, let's just take a look and see some of the ideas it had. Simplify language and vocabulary, yep. Maybe provide a bilingual glossary or visual aids. When it comes to visual aids, focus on supporting comprehension, maybe subtitles if there's a video, appreciate that tip around accessibility. Right, these are okay. These are some general ideas. Depending on my teaching experience, there might be some that I hadn't considered before, or if I'm working with an instructor, it can be a nice discussion point of here's some ideas, let's talk through them. And yes, I see, Mary, you have your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Sorry, yeah, thanks. So I had a question. So as you're in one, you ask the one question to generate the lesson plan.
Mhm.
So as long as you don't go away from this page, when you ask follow-up questions within that chat bar, it's going to link it automatically to what you're working on now, because that's how you're able to ask the other questions. And it's so then it mentioned like worksheets and handouts, so then we would need to generate those as well, right? Because I didn't see it I think at the bottom, so then we'd have to ask it to generate those types of worksheets for us, but in theory it could.
That's right, yeah.
Okay,
so
cool.
The first part of the question, thanks for asking that. Again, apologies for folks if the movement is unpleasant. Close your eyes for a quick moment. Yeah, this is all on, you could think of it as one page or one chat history that I have with ChatGPT. That at the top was that first prompt, create a lesson plan about mental health for a family literacy class. And then there was its initial output or response. Keep scrolling, there was my next prompt of change to a 2-hour lesson and so on. So it's all here within this. You can start a new chat, but if you are wanting to build on this same thought process and brainstorming, it's best to stick to this one and then add questions like I've been doing. But yeah, the question about handouts, let's take a quick look and see how it does generating those handouts. And I'm just gonna remind myself where that is. Okay, handouts with information on mental health. So this is where it helps to tinker with these AI tools. And try to take the steps one step at a time. They are excellent with complex tasks like creating lesson plans, like creating stories and texts or quizzes, multiple choice questions, and so on, but it does better if you really stair step it. So handouts, let's see. I actually wanted to help me think about, help me decide what topics the handouts with information on mental health should focus on. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to see where the chat's going. Okay, so listing out a lot of different topics that we might bring in. Just an intro, common health challenges, stigma and stereotypes. Maybe let's try the common mental health challenges, or a handout on common mental health challenges. Outline, let's see, some examples and signs. Let's see. Outline some common challenges with 2 examples and signs associated with each challenge. All right, so I'm trying to be very detailed to get it to produce something that I'm actually looking for. The more specific I can be, the better the output will be. And so we see here, this is the outline of this handout. Common health challenges, stress. Example 1, example 2, signs of stress, anxiety. Example 1, 2, signs of stress, depression, and so on. All right, so I could spend time simplifying this, adding on to it. I can copy and paste this into a Word document or Google Doc, and then format it as I would like. Generally, these chatbots don't create files of worksheets. It creates text that you can then put into something else, like Google Docs or Microsoft Word, to format it in a way that you won't be able to print or share otherwise. The question in the chat there, will my account save a library of my interactions? Yes, if I let it save its chat history. In ChatGPT, very briefly in that video, there was that example of the user, disabling their chat history, so that you can do that. For me, I don't have that selected, so on the left column, typically, if you're on a computer using ChatGPT, you'll see there's a lot of different other topics that I've used it to discuss. So if I click on those previous ones, like I did a reading activities for family literacy, you'll see the prompt that I had put in, its output and responses. So that's if it saves your history, but in settings, there is a way that you can disable. You can clear those chats, or you can disable the chat history and training. For the other tools, you will need to look and see how that might work. But again, this is why, generally speaking, I recommend not sharing personally identifiable information. Okay, so that was just a little demonstration of how you might use a chatbot. One more question here from the chat. If I followed the exact prompt you used, also using the same tool, ChatGPT 3.5, would it provide the same answer or does it change? Really great question. The responses are randomly generated. So I could even tomorrow create a new chat history, put in the same prompt, it will come up with something different. If someone else puts in all the exact same things, it will come up with something different. The way these chatbots are set up is, I won't go too much into the technical details, but it really is looking more kind of word to word to word, and it's piecing all this together. It's not so much, pulling from the internet, copy pasting into your response. So each time we'll have something unique for you. Okay, so I would love for you all to have some time to practice this and have some different options for how you can try out these chatbots. First thing, though, it's really important to think about your why. The EdTech Center at World Education, when they have spoken about the uses of artificial intelligence in adult education, one of their recommended practices is goals before tools. As exciting as technology can be, what's its purpose? How is it helping us? How is it helping our learners? What is it doing for us? Have that in mind, and then how you use the tool will be all the more clear. So these options that I will post to the chat momentarily, they have some different levels of interaction and engagement. The first option, you can just take a look at some other example uses of generative AI, some different prompts and samples of the kind of outputs that the chatbot might give you. But again, like that question alluded to, each time that you put in that prompt, it will be something a little bit different. Or you might come up with your own prompt and try it out if you haven't already been doing that. And then the third one, I will share links to some prompt collections or prompt libraries, some examples of, if you're looking to generate a sample writing text for a writing lesson, what words could you put into the chatbot to get what you're looking for? All right, so let me put these in the chat and then I can talk through the options for us. Or if you have the link to the slides still, you can also just come down to these parts and then click on the links. So in the chat, it's going to be a little bit of a long text. Apologies in advance for that. But there's option 1 in the chat, option 2, option 3, and just the reminder of where the links to these tools. Again, they're basically just websites that are tapping into these AI models. But what's been revolutionary is how easy it is for everyday people like us to use AI. It's because of how they've laid them out in these websites. So we'll do this for about 8 or so minutes, and then we'll come back and get your thoughts on it. I'll share some other tips. But again, quickly, option 1 is read through some example prompts. All of them are centered around ESOL, or teaching English language acquisition. Think about what you like from them, what you could try for your own lessons. Those examples are from several months ago, but they are a great starting point to help think about potential uses of AI chatbots. Option 2, try out any prompt that comes to mind for you, and then go back and forth. Simplify it, have it make it longer, have it create the handout that it's mentioning. It's having a conversation with the chatbot to refine it. And the third, from either of those 2 links there, look for a prompt that you'd like to try, give it a try, and then again, converse with the chatbot to refine it. So we'll give this about 8 minutes until 2:45. I will try to remain quiet, at least for, let's say, 3 minutes until 2:40. If you do have questions for me, post them in the chat, I'll respond there. And then if you want to talk with me after 2:40, I'll come off mute and we can also just talk through things that you're trying. So, and Marilyn, I don't know if you want to pause the recording and then we resume at the 2:40, or if you just want to keep it going, whichever works best.
I'll pause it for you.
Great, thanks. Minutes. Still have a couple more minutes if folks want to be trying out one of these options on your own. But if you want to unmute and ask questions or talk through something that you're trying, feel free. I'm here. Yes, Sherry.
Thank you so much. I have used Chat GPT a little bit previously, but today I asked it to create a fall and Halloween desk scavenger hunt. And it did beautifully, and I think I will use it in my next
Oh, awesome.
Zoom.
Oh, that's great. For the group, can you share, is that pretty much the exact prompt that you put in?
Yeah, I can, let me go back and I can read it to you. Hold on just a second.
Great, thank you.
And I'll share what I put in. I said, let's see. Create a desk scavenger hunt game with suggested prizes celebrating fall and Halloween.
Very nice, folks. There you go. There's an activity you can use, nice and seasonal, coming up for this next week. Thanks for sharing that, Sherry.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, Mary, go ahead.
Okay, so I did a lesson for like on grammar, like past participle, and it gave all the directions. And it said have examples for them. So, but it didn't really give me examples. So I'm an anchor chart person. So I typed, what about an anchor chart? Now it gave me all the information to put on an anchor chart, but didn't give me a picture of an anchor chart like I would get off the internet.
Yeah, which tool are you using?
Bard.
Bard. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's where I haven't felt like I've seen as much success in getting it to pull like specific images or I mean Bard in theory and Bing as well can pull images into its responses, and I've seen it do it from time to time, but that's where that 80-20 rule, like, right, that it can come up with that content that we can put into something else, but then we have to
kind of like it gives you I agree, it kind of gives you a map to like, instead of trying to figure it all at once, you can say, oh, okay, that makes sense, and then you can build it from there. But
I agree. Yeah, that's kind of how I really like using these AI tools, that it really gets things started and then taking it to the finish line, having it, polished and refined for my class. It's still on me, AI can't replace us in any of those senses. But if it saves a little time, great, right?
And one other thing I like about it is that, in adult education, when I was teaching, as primarily as math is my favorite, right? So when it comes to language and grammar, well, I know it, but I haven't had as much experience teaching it. So I find that helpful for the time saver piece of it all, because we're so limited in time.
Sure. Yeah. I started out as a volunteer and then moved into a paid teaching position, and now I support our volunteers and our part-time paid teachers. And I know that's such a pain point, right? The teachers want to be able to curate and find these wonderful resources, but there's just not enough time in the day, or there's not the budget to pay for all that time. Thanks for sharing, Mary. All right, so wherever you are in your personal explorations, do continue with that. Like we were saying earlier, you could try with a different tool, put in the same prompt. You could clear your chat history, put in the same prompt, see what the different thing that it comes up with. It really can help just get some ideas going, I think. And then on this slide are those same links that were part of option 3. Just if you weren't exploring that, to remind you or let you know some ideas where you could use these AI chatbots or generative AI tools. It can help with generating ideas, could help with creating a story or a passage or even a poem or a limerick or other creative written tasks. Could shorten or simplify texts. It could create comprehension questions or discussion prompt questions. Could help with generating examples of a particular grammar construction, creating dialogues between a worker of this particular position with a customer regarding this type of issue or functional language. Can also help with creating rubrics. Some of these will require a lot more back and forth conversing with the AI tool than others, but here are some other ways that a lot of other language teachers are finding it to be helpful. So I do want to share 2 different sort of metaphors that I find really helpful for thinking about these generative AI tools or AI chatbots. And one is AI as a contractor. What do I mean by that? By that, I mean that these generative AI tools, they have a lot of skills. They can do a lot of different things. They can build so many different things that we ask of it. But it doesn't know you. It doesn't know your goal. It doesn't know your learning objectives, your needs, your learners, your preferences, and so on. And so that's where just as if you're working with a contractor, You got to help provide a context. You need to use more details in your prompts, and that it's not just a one and done. You've given it an instruction and it will deliver perfectly. You have to be conversing with it. It has to be an iterative process, going back and forth, refining, tweaking, telling, giving it feedback on, I like that, I didn't like this, can you change it? So that's where, for me, AI as a contractor, I think really helps encapsulate how I should approach using these tools. I know that some others will say that you can think of AI as an intern. I kind of like the contractor one more because its skill set is vast and it has a lot of potential, whereas an intern might be more just the enthusiastic helper, but not necessarily the skilled thing or that can support me. So one way that you might help with providing more detailed prompts is through the use of prompt frameworks. And this is just one example of many. There are so many. If you Google prompt frameworks, a lot of different ideas will come up. But the idea of a framework helps us think of what details we should be providing to a chatbot. So things like what role you want it to take on, helping it to narrow down its all the data that it's been trained on to. You are an expert in such and such. What action you want it to take, whether it's creating a lesson plan, it's creating a set of questions, examples of a grammar construction, what's the context? So without sharing personal information, telling it some details about your class, if it's one-on-one tutoring, or if it's a class of 20 students, is it in person, is it online? Are all of the learners from a particular country, or do they all speak the same language, or is it very multilingual? What's the level of the class? And then if you really want to go into details, you could provide an example of what you're looking for, which might be something that it generated for you previously, or it might be an activity that you found really successful in the past, and you want some other examples of that type of activity. And then the format. So if you wanted a bulleted list, if you want it in a simple table, it's not, a PowerPoint or an Excel. It can't do too many different types of formatting, but it can do some. So this example will be in the slides, so you can look at, but the gist is the more specific you can be, the better. That said, where I find the easiest and best potential for AI is really thinking of it as a thought partner. So in that sense, it's working with you, and you're working with it to come up with the thing that you're looking for. And I think the easiest, most versatile strategy for this is get it to ask you questions. So we want it doesn't know our context, right? It doesn't know us, but we can prompt it to ask us questions so that it gets the information that it needs to come up with the thing you're looking for. So it can be as simple as part of your prompt, if it was that mental health lesson plan, saying, please provide feedback on the effectiveness and clarity of the following prompt. Create a mental health lesson for a family literacy class. Or please ask me clarifying questions before you answer to ensure a better understanding of the request. Or any sort of iteration of that. Please ask me questions to get the information you need. It's been something that I've been trying out this past week. I find it saves me so much time to not have to try to think of everything beforehand, and it helps guide my thinking a little bit. In some ways, it's prompting me of, hey, are you looking for this? Are you looking for that? And then I can give it that information to help it come up with its response. And if you're wondering about what might be the most effective strategy, there's a research article published recently that was touching on this sort of idea of having the AI tool kind of prompt you for more information, and that the quality of the responses at the end of that process, as rated by human individuals, was better than some other strategies like using a prompt framework or just conversing back and forth. So it's something I encourage you to try. It's an easy thing to add on to any of your prompts. But again, there's a lot of options when it comes to using chatbots. And so with that in mind, I'd love for us to go back to this Slido. I have one final question for you all to think about and reflect upon. And it's in the chat, the link. Let me switch to our question there momentarily. So what tips on artificial intelligence, AI chatbots, generative AI, all these words I've been using to describe ChatGPT, Bard, Bing, Claude, and so on. What tips on AI would you give to someone who couldn't attend today's session? You can post in the chat, or if you want to post in the Slido page, either way, I'd love to hear from you. What are some of these takeaways that you're having? What might you share with other teachers at your school? Some of the things that are coming in, starting with the Zoom chat. Take the time to explore the resources to figure out what works for you. Love that it supports creation and lessening the workload. And then some things on the Slido. Check out the prompt libraries, right? There's teachers, educators have been using these tools for many months now. Some have kindly shared the prompts that they find to be effective. There's a lot of, we're all in this together, if you will, that sort of sentiment. There's no need to work in isolation. There's a lot that you can, a lot of help that you can get. It's worth giving a try. Don't be nervous about getting started. Try one. Use a lot of details in your prompt. It can save you time. Get on one of those sites, try it out. You need to oversee and evaluate what AI creates. It's like a contractor, exactly, right? We're not removing ourselves from the picture. We're very much part of that process. We have to evaluate it, verify it before we bring it to our students. Don't ask it questions, right? It's not a search engine, but tell it what you want, be specific, add your starting request and tweak it as the AI generates its prompt. It's fast, it's interactive, can help with lesson plans, prompts, activities, can save you time. And then other things in the chat that it could help with the writing process for, like, for example, for the NEDP, helping to lay out a prompt, a writing prompt, for example. Get it to ask you questions. All right, excellent. So I'll keep this up. I'd love for you to keep sharing these. I will add them to the slides a little bit later. But let's come back now to our slides and start wrapping things up for today. All right, so in our last few minutes, we'd welcome any questions that you might have. I'll just preview that in the final slides here. There are just a couple resources that I really think are great starting points beyond today's session. Also check out tomorrow's session on AI and lesson planning. But these ones can help provide a more well-rounded picture on the use of AI. So not just for lesson planning, but also, again, those AI literacy considerations around bias and plagiarism and citation and copyright. And also just a lot of other examples, other ways. If you're not an ESOL teacher, if you're not a workforce development teacher, but you teach something else, these resources provide a lot of examples to consider. But I'm guilty of reading, learning, watching, viewing, consuming information. I think, like all of you had said, that's the better suggestion. Try it, get in there, make tweaks to the prompts, help it do what you need it to do to come up with what you're looking for. So with that, I want to thank you, and I will stop talking so that if you have questions to post in the chat, or if you want to unmute in our last few minutes, I'm happy to take any questions.
Xavier, I had a question.
Yes.
Once I set up the account, does AI suddenly get into some gathering information about me specifically based on the phone number that I give it, my emails and things like that?
Yeah, and it's an important question, right? And we've got to be critical users of technology. With all of these, it's typically just you add your email to create an account. And kind of like if you're using a Google account to sign up for uh, a subscription or a website, it'll indicate what permissions you're giving to it, what things you're letting it access. My understanding is that in terms of training its model for future improvements, it's only using the conversations that you're having with it in the chat space itself. So it's not able to, is my understanding. It's certainly not planning to pull from anything that's connected to your email. It's really just your direct interactions with it. But I do find that these ones are good about saying up front at least their terms of service and what things they're accessing and not accessing. And I know all of us have different levels of comfort with, you know, how much to share or not want to share with tech tools. But that's, from what I've seen so far, that would be my answer. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Mary O'Brien has a question.
Oh, yes. I think Mary had just asked that one.
Thanks. I think that was another Mary, right?
Oh, sorry.
I think it's two of us. It's okay. Mary. So thank you. This has been really great. And I do have a question for you. So I mean, I've used AI just slightly, but nothing to make lessons or anything like that. But I was writing curricula for another organization, and someone recommended that I use AI, and I thought, no, I can't do that because I'm actually writing the curriculum for the course, not just creating a lesson. And so I was wondering what your thoughts were on that, because if we're just making a lesson for our everyday class, that's one thing. But if we were like creating curricula per se for, for either our organization or another, that's probably a different story and not acceptable. Right? Or what do you think?
It's a complicated question, right? I
Right.
think,
And so, and I didn't, because I thought that would not, if they were, paying me to do that, that would not be something that they would appreciate. So I did not, of course, but
yeah,
I was just curious as to if you knew where this was going in that regard, as far as curriculum writers, because it would save a lot of time, for us. But
for sure. Yeah, I think my sense of it is there, some workplaces are really seeing that, they want their employees to be able to use whatever tools are at their disposal to increase productivity, perhaps increase the quality of their work. And so I think my sense is that there are many organizations, not all, but many that would love to see, if it's a curriculum writer, for example, use whatever's at their disposal to bring the best thing for their learners and their teachers. I think in terms of copyright, that's a consideration.
right, yeah.
The jury is still out, as I understand it, in terms of the legalities. If we're thinking of images that are generated by AI like this one, I think a general recommendation is to say that it was generated with AI assistance or the assistance of AI. But then others, point out that there are legal debates and court decisions that are just starting to come in around whether the person putting in the prompts, that they own this image, or it's just an open, public domain image. I think my sense is, transparency is better in general, and especially when it comes to creating like a curriculum, for example, to say, assuming they won't have any discomfort with it, but to say that, I got some help from ChatGPT or Claude. I think as people learn more about AI and its uses and potentials, I think they see the benefits of it for helping us as a thought partner, helping us do more with our limited time. And I think the concerns, they don't go away, but I think it might be an administrator or someone who hasn't spent a lot of time yet learning about the benefits of AI. And so they're initially just very hesitant and very fearful, which is understandable. But I think, as they learn more, they'll see the benefits of it. And just to quickly add, if you're working on writing a curriculum, I think the general guidance I get, and yes, it is 4:00, so folks, if you do have to go, please, I'll say this last thing and then I'll ask Marilyn to stop the recording. But thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate your time. Email me if you'd want to connect more. or want to learn more with me, I'm happy to help. For curriculum stuff, I think what I've seen is really take it in steps and stages. And so really kind of big picture, like what's the outline for the curriculum? You know, if it's going to be how many units, what might the units be for whatever the topic or type of class is. And then from, you know, broad objectives and units, then go unit by unit. Okay, what might the lessons be? What's the assessment going to be? Then go to the next unit. Instead of, you know, I want a curriculum that has the lesson plans, the unit assessments, the activity ideas. It'll put something out, but it's not going to be as good as if you sort of stair step it. So just to add that there for like those big projects, to really start kind of general and then gradually have it work on more specific tasks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Marilyn, thank you. Thank you very much for helping to facilitate this. We'll stop the recording now. Have a great evening, everyone. Hope to see you all at sessions tomorrow and the rest of the week.